It was a great collaboration. Thank you. Next up, Chris Tebbets. He's going to read from his piece, Bob and Cub, out front of the general store.
Bob and Cub stood staring at the black town car that had just pulled to a stop in front of Bob and Cub's general store, somewhere around 3 o'clock on that stifling Thursday afternoon. A rush of cool air mixed with the heat coming off the sidewalk while a dark window, black as the car itself, descended to show them a passenger inside. She was 90 if she was a day, and all done up like you might expect somebody in the back of such a car to be. Two pearls, each the size of a milk dud, tugged at her earlobes. "Excuse me," she said in a taut New England voice. "I don't suppose you might know where I could find a toy store around here." "Toy store?" Bob said, not because he didn't understand, but because he was still taking in the odd picture that had just drawn itself in front of him right there on Harper Avenue. "I've come quite a distance for my great-granddaughter's birthday," the woman said, "and it only occurs to me now that I've left behind the gift I intended to bring. I'm telling you, I could just kick myself." "Which direction you headed?" Cub asked. The lady disappeared into the back seat and reappeared with a slip of paper in her hand. It looked to be some kind of email. "Toward Barkley," she said, which meant south. "Well, you might do better heading back up the highway to exit 12, Cub said. "There's a bunch of stores right there. Shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes extra." "Oh, dear." The lady looked darkly down at her watch. When she looked up again, though, her gaze seemed to catch on something behind them, and her face lightened. "How much for that?" she asked. Bob turned to see the old rocking mermaid on the sidewalk in front of the store's plate glass window. It was 50 cents to ride, though it didn't catch much interest anymore. Now, instead of quarters, it mostly just gathered rain in the rainy season and dust the rest of the time. "Oh, her?" Cub said. "I don't think your granddaughter had—" "Would this cover it?" she asked. Her diamond watch was already off her wrist, reflecting sunlight from every angle as she dangled it over the curb between them. Bob squinted at the watch, then over at Cub. Then they both turned simultaneously and looked again at the mermaid. "We could probably get it in the trunk if you like," Cub said.
Thanks, Chris. Chris's triptych approach is a really difficult feat to pull off for a short story. It's written from 3 points of view, and each one is immersive and captivating, and together they trace a really delightful narrative arc. So read it and enjoy. Now we're going to have another couple trivia questions, so get ready.
All right. I was realizing I probably should have read them out loud, so I'm going to do that. In the classic 1957 children's book, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, what is the name of the town from which the Grinch steals holiday presents and decorations? Oh, this was too easy. I was like, oh yeah, we know that. Ooh, we have someone who's daring to think for themselves. I'm just kidding. Yes, the answer is Whoville. Very good, everybody. Very, very good. All right, let's go to 2B. Draco Dormiens Nunquam Titilandus is the official motto for what fictional place of learning? A little bit of a question on this one. Anybody haven't gone yet? The answer is indeed Hogwarts. So let's do 2C. Which 2001 novel features the title character stranded on a lifeboat after a shipwreck with a Bengal tiger named Richard Parker?
Maybe ask everybody to raise their hand to the answer they think is right.
Oh, okay. I will hand it over to Marco.
Okay. Thanks, Gail. And now we'll hear from Robin Collada, who will read from her piece, First Line of Defense.
Here we go. Okay. "The lizard is just plain dead," Carl said, but to Ruth it looked limp and lifeless. The cat was batting it around the kitchen floor when it caught her eye, the little body pushed around like a curling stone, the cat's paw swishing left and right like a broom on a slick surface. Carl grabbed the bottom of an apothecary jar and a spatula, and Ruth grabbed the cat. He was good at this, and scooped up the lizard on the second try, Ruth yelling, "Is it dead? Is it dead?" Carl running out the front door, jar in hand. He tilted it and watched the lizard slide down, looking a lot like a canned sardine, then softly shook the container to get the body fully out. laying it carefully onto the warm pebbles beneath the sago palm. He raced back inside, and they both looked through the window at the lizard, careful not to let it see them just in case it should get startled, assuming it was still alive. Ruth thought to ask Carl again, but bit her tongue. Carl hates it when she doubts him. What do you think? She blurted out. Carl just shrugged his shoulder. And she thought how sinewy he looked as he stood there in his white t-shirt, tension showing in his arm muscles and in the veins on top of his calloused hands. He didn't used to be so buff, but she noticed him morphing over the last year, his body and attitude growing hard, dense like the weights he lifted. Now his forehead had little purple lines that pop out whenever he gets annoyed with her, which is often. When she first accepted his offer to move in, she wondered at his sensitivity towards unwanted strays and lost souls and figured that applied to her as well. But she learned there was a hierarchy of which lives he saved and which he didn't. Mostly things like bugs and spiders and creatures that crawl. It helped if they didn't ask to be saved or redeemed or forgiven or ask questions.
Thanks, Robin. I love the juxtaposition between as a dedicated saver of spiders and other things that get into the house. I love the juxtaposition between the relationship and the saving of the small creatures. That was great. Next up, we'll have Gail, who will read Pam Martin Lawrence's Drabble Family Values.
All right, let's see. Aw, baby gay. Fuck yeah, remember when that was us, babe? And look at us big butch daddies now. Their giggles carry in the pre-dawn quiet of the park as I'm doing my very first wheel of shame, too euphoric to ride my bike, wearing my sexed hair and my sex-positive badge with self-conscious pride, and I'm almost certain my chucks are on the wrong feet. I look over at the two dudes as they weave unsteadily along the sidewalk, Pink Mohawk's arm thrown casually over Shoddy's shoulder, like that's where it lives. That's what I want when I grow up.
Thanks, Gail. I just the imagery of that it just yeah got me right off the bat. So well done. Next up, we'll hear from Travis, who will read from his piece, The Magician's Assistant and the Rabbit's Hat.
Yeah, okay. 1 second here. Sorry, guys. This is from the middle of the story, so um um okay. Clarence stands up from the cabinets. All right. Oh, okay. The hat. And I say, "You didn't look in the hat?" He ignores this and runs to the top hat that he's left upside down on the easy chair, picks it up, and takes a long, deep breath. "Not there?" I say. "Kinsey, I'm going to ask you a big favor, an enormous favor. And I think he's going to finally ask me to perform some tricks for him. I mean, I feel bad about Rosemary missing and everything, but this is a temporary gig and the pay is trash. I need you to look in the hat." "What?" "I'll be here if you need anything. Please, she's been with me for a long time. Would you take a look?" When I first met Clarence, I suspected he might be a drinker. He never did or said anything inappropriate, but he could be like gregarious to a fault at some rehearsals, asking me about my acting stuff and why I'd moved out to the coast, and then some days he seemed morose and short-tempered. Then I realized he was lonely, a little bitter that he'd ended up here eking a living doing 8 or 9 shows a week at the tiniest theaters, sometimes even event spaces, big work conferences that needed entertainment, but never birthday parties. He won't stoop to that. Just look. When I was younger, I could walk farther, crawl around here, Clarence says, and shoves the hat into my hands. It's an oversized, beat up thing. Even if he claims that Houdini used it, I seriously doubt he believes it. I look into the hat, nothing, just black felt. I just see hat, I say. Oh, and we need to haul ass if we're going to beat traffic. I put it on, I laugh. All right, but then we're going. I put the hat on. It's too big, and I'm going to redo my hair afterward.
Thanks, Travis. I was fortunate enough to work with Travis in editing his piece, which didn't need much editing, and I love the female character who ends up being a very reluctant hero, and she's not really tuning into the weirdness of what's going on until the end of the story, and it kept me going the whole way. So really, job well done. And next up, we'll have one more round of trivia from Gail.
If I can get it going. All right. In Beloved by Toni Morrison, what is the name of the daughter who returns as a ghost? Seth, Denver, Beloved, or Baby Suggs? I think this is the first one where we have had more than two choices that people are questioning. I read Beloved a really long time ago.
Yeah, I've read that like 40 years ago. Sorry, I had to guess.
76% participation. Anyone else want to guess before we... It actually was Beloved. I know.